Morning. Hello, welcome back. It's Sarah from Roadworthy. Yes, it looks like I'm in jail. I'm not. Um, this is my last morning in Florida. I fly out in a couple of hours to head back home. And I came out to film my weekly reads. And yes, I have a cold. And the chairs and all the benches are soaking wet. So I'm sitting on the ground, leaning against the railing. So that's why it looks like I'm in jail. It's been a lovely visit, but it's been very warm, yes, but muggy. It's finally drying out. So my mom and I generally love to read outside. We'll go to the beach, we'll go sit at the pool, in their, retirement complex. And we read out at the pool once, and we kept having to dip ourselves into the pool. Neither one of us are swimmers, to cool off. It was just so humid. And we ended up more than actually reading, I think. But yesterday we finally made it, my last day, we finally made it over to the beach to read for a couple of hours, and that was just lovely. So I did get some things done. So that was good. And not as much as I had hoped, because I was hoping to leave some things behind for my mother to read. So I'm looking at my little stack here. What do I want to start with? So let me start with my nonfiction, and this was for Framed in September. So I read The Rape of Europa, The Fate of Europe's Treasures in the Third Reich and the Second World War by Lynn H. Nicholas. As you can see, this was a winner of the National Books Critics Circle Award. This is sort of as it describes on the tin. The beginning of the book is really a description of the really quite systematic process that the Nazis had for confiscating, in some cases legitimately buying, art from, both within Germany, but also in countries that they invaded. So, we talk about Poland, Holland, Belgium, France, Russia, and what that process looked like and how it evolved over time. Art was collected. Hitler was a bit of a collector, but Goering was famously the big collector of, and also many other people in the party sort of jumped on this train as a way to self-aggrandize and purchase art. And sometimes purchasing art to give as a gift to Hitler for his birthday, anyway, kind of interesting. The role of art within the Nazi Party. But it sort of goes through so in addition to sort of purchasing or acquiring art for different individuals, there was also a very systemic operation to collect art that was perceived as Germanic, and this could be whether or not the artist was German, for German museums. And Hitler also had a plan to create this giant museum, um, again as a way to glorify German culture. And then we have, as the war is progressing, and the tide turns. So there's also in that early period a lot too of museums, the Louvre, or other museums in these invaded countries, trying to protect their collections, as well as other dealers and and other prominent people. Sort of the shenanigans they went through to try and protect, hide, remove from the country collections. And then again, as the war goes on, you see the process of the Allies moving in and starting to discover these caches of art, or what happened to these collections when, let's say, they got moved, outside of, Stalingrad, and as the Germans get closer and closer, the collection keeps having to get moved, and sort of what happened there. And then as the Allies come in, the same sort of thing happens. The Germans trying to protect what they acquired, in some cases simply abandoning, different things sort of happened. But you, if you've read about the Monuments Men or seen the movie, they are featured quite a bit in this book. So those might be nice. This might be a nice way to sort of reinforce what you learned previously, or provide additional detail. I don't know, because I haven't read that book or watched that movie. So, but it was really fascinating to read about how overwhelmed the American military was, as well as the British, about the sheer volume of some of these art caches, and what to do, and how to repatriate, in and how political that became at times, and just what a huge job, both technically, protecting these artworks, but it just the volume, the space, creating inventories, trying to figure out where different collections went and ended up. It was a huge undertaking. And so you do sort of get a sense of what an overwhelming job that was, and difficult. And there was also just wonderful descriptions of, as Germany is getting divided up and the Russians are taking everything, how the Americans and British were trying to get as much as they could to be able to save it for Germany, return things, and not have it disappear into a Soviet black hole. So anyway, that was kind of fascinating. This is super detailed. I mean, super detailed. Lots of people are discussed. You've got the chaos of a war situation. So things changed. People were trying to do, trying to save things, and then as the war goes on, do they become collaborators, or are they doing something in order to try and save themselves, you know? So interesting, but incredibly detailed. To me, this was described as a scholarly work that reads like a gripping adventure. I would not say it reads like a gripping adventure. This, to me, felt pretty scholarly. So, if you're at all remotely interested, it's kind of fascinating. Okay. Brief Lives by Anita Brookner. This is my first Anita Brookner. I have one more on my shelf, and I have not read Hotel du Lac, which is her Booker Prize winner, that I think a lot of people say is really one of her best. I'm not sure she's for me. This is really character study of Faye and sort of her frenemy, Julia. Faye is married to Owen at the start of this book in a very sort of loveless, unhappy, unfulfilled marriage for her. And it's told from her perspective, so we don't know how Owen feels about it, but to her it's very loveless and unsatisfying. And she sort of does everything for his career. And his business partner is Charlie, I want to say, Charlie. And so Owen encourages her to become friends with Charlie's wife, Julia, who is very self-centered, kind of always putting Faye down. You know, Julia, you know, is you know, a little above Faye's station. And so Julie is always sort of expecting her to bow to her whim and do little tasks for her and, you know, sort of fawn over her. And Faye just kind of does it and goes along with it. And you sort of see their relationship over time. You know, eventually Owen dies. You know, Charlie dies. You know, they get older. And Faye, she's just sort of mousy. Like she falls into an affair. But again, realizes she's just taking on the role of mistress without questioning. And then that ends, and then she becomes interested in another man, but not really. It's almost like it's an expectation. And again, she's always sort of trying to become the woman that she thinks this man wants. Yeah, it's just sort of a book about this mousy, sort of never satisfied woman, lonely, unhappy, but she also recognizes that she's not the type of person to like take the bull by the horns and fulfill her own destiny. And apparently all of Anita Brookner's books are like this. So like I said, it's very well written. These are very interesting psychological portrayals. But like I said, I'm not super sure she's for me. So I'm interested in giving Brookner another go. And, and maybe it was this one, although this is one that people have, consistently said is one of her better ones. So, again, Anita Brookner just might not be like for me. Then we have, for Shorty September, Willa Cather's O Pioneers. I really, really enjoyed this book. So we have Alexandra Bergson running the family farm. So obviously they're Scandinavian. And they have their farm in Nebraska. And her father is dying at the opening of this book and asks her to take care of the farm, recognizing that his two sons aren't perhaps the best business decision makers and aren't really as passionate about farming or the land as she is. And keeping the land in the family is incredibly important to him. And so we follow Alexandra's life largely through this childhood moment up into her 40s, I believe. And sort of the fates and fortunes of the family farm. Definitely, there is a reverence for the land. You definitely get a feel for the love of the farming, the countryside, and how hard the work was. It's an interesting period of time. This is published in 1913. And so it really starts Alexandra, this is really sort of pioneer period, right, of just acquiring the farm and acquiring the land and trying to turn it into a farm, a functioning, successful farm. And then we sort of go through, and it starts to become industrialization, so you start to have farm equipment showing up. So it's an interesting glimpse into that transition from pioneering, trying to make the land work, to these really established farms and communities. You get glimpses of the Czech community, as well as the French community. You've got a little bit of everything. You've got love, friendship, there is it plot heavy? No, there's plot for sure, but again, it really feels like, in some ways, a character study of Alexandra. Her commitment to the land, her desire to make this farm work and, her success. And her brothers, she's more successful than her brothers who become bitter. It's a quiet book. I can see why people say Willa Cather is a young adult author. I don't think that's really true. I mean, yes, there's nothing scandalous in here. Sorry for the break. Since I'm sitting on the ground, somebody got concerned that I was injured or somehow incapacitated. Anyway, I really enjoyed this book. There's something comfy and cozy about Cather that there's definitely nuance to her writing. There's a lot of character. So to me, it's when someone tells me something feels like YA, to me that sounds like heavy plot and not necessarily a lot of deep psychological insight. And I don't think that describes Cather. And the final book is The End of Active Service by Matt Young. This was my audiobook. It gets described as like the reverse war novel. Instead of following someone as they go to war, we're following Dean Pusey as he returns from Iraq. And it is interesting in the sense that we see him going from a very regimented, structured Marine life with rules, procedures, patterns, to civilian life that's much more unstructured, and how he struggles. He and so it's interesting that a lot of the descriptions of military life are, sort of these day-to-day, here was the process, here's the rules we lived by, and then these glimpses of civilian life, of bar fights and difficulties with his family and so it's interesting sort of structurally how that goes. Plot-wise, we have Dean coming back, and then about, 6 months after he's been home, he meets a woman in a bar. And they're casually dating, and she becomes pregnant, and they have this child. And that's not a spoiler. That is, I've seen that. I can't remember if it's on the back of the book, but it's in the description. And you sort of see him struggling to merge, trying to be sort of the civilian, American male and make that jive with his experiences in Iraq as a soldier. There's definitely some trauma that he never discloses to anybody, friends, his partner. And he starts to become followed. He describes it as being followed by ghosts of his dead battle buddy Ruiz, and a goat that a sheep that he cared for in Iraq. And so the sheep, almost like the good angel, and Ruiz, sort of the bad angel, commenting as he's going through, his life. So, he and his girlfriend will be at Applebee's, and Ruiz will be like, "Dog, you gonna let her talk to you like that?" Whereas the sheep is more encouraging of how to be a partner, how to get along with his family, how to be a good father. So, and then, I don't want to say what happens, but he's definitely struggling. And sort of the book, there is a climax when he is left to care for the baby. Max, his partner, she needs to go away for a business, event for a weekend, and he sort of is incapable of sleeping, and everything sort of blows up. I really, really enjoyed this book. This is a debut, and I would definitely be interested in and reading more that Matt Young produces. You really did feel like you were in Dean's head, and I really got the sense of his struggles and challenges. Not only trying to return to civilian life, but he's 23 years old. So part of it is just being that age, trying to figure out what you're doing with your life. This was definitely my favorite of the bunch. And I don't know how I heard about this book, but, definitely one I would encourage people to look for, because it was powerful and really well done, and honestly, it would be a very interesting book for Mental Health May, because really, as you may have gotten the jive here from Ruiz and the sheep, that there are definitely some PTSD struggles happening here. And again, I thought it was a really, really interesting character study. So, pretty much a good week of reading. And I'm going to wrap it up and pack up, eat some breakfast, and get ready to head home. Bye.